It's the bike that makes you want to put an Indiana Jones hat on, grab a whip, and go explore in Africa. It's the bike with a name so emblematic, Yamaha took more than 4 years to make just to get it absolutely right. It's the bike the arrival of which in 2019 eclipsed everything else. Seriously, Harley Abelson Livewire, Indian FTR 1200, Yamaha Tenere.
Now you have my attention.
It's the bike if the ancestor of which didn't exist, the BMW GS wouldn't even be a thing. Imagine that! What would consultants be riding right in the middle of London? Today you and I will go over one of the best motorcycling sagas in history, okay? I'll try to keep it concise, but it will have it all. 70s Yamaha, birth of the Dakar, crazy Frenchman, bromance, how the Yamaha killed the Tenere, how Yamaha revived the Tenere, why it took so long, what's bad about it, the lot. If you're even a tiny bit curious about the Yamaha Tenere, then you've come to the right place. So grab a drink, take a seat, and welcome to another episode of Unwrapped. If you're new to the channel, boy, you're gonna love being part of the gang, so let's cut to the chase, okay? Just subscribe now. If you enable the notification bell too, I'll even throw in a month free to my OnlyFans. Hey? You need to understand that back in the 50s and 60s, much like me in high school, Yamaha was a nobody, okay? Unlike today where you could ask your grandma which generation R1 she prefers, back in those days, Yamaha and Japanese manufacturers in general, they were the fringe companies. The few importers who decided to live life on hard mode and import Japanese metal had little reputation they could sell the bikes on, so had to work harder to convince you to buy this Yamaha what?
Yamaha.
What?
Yamaha. Don't confuse it with other two-wheelers.
Over a Triumph, a BSA, a Norton, a BMW, etc. Despite being good at what they do, remember Yamaha in '66 built the whole of the Toyota 2000 GT, Yamaha and Japanese brands had a hard time breaking into the big boy bike market of the world. That is till Honda sent the CB750 Torpedo in 1969. 69. This opened the floodgates to Japanese motorcycles because people all of a sudden were like, wait, so this is more reliable, it has the latest technology, and it's cheap? I would like to buy this Yamaha, please. Yamaha. Yamaha. No, just Yamaha. Yamaha. No, just Yamaha. Yamaha. Yes, just take it. Why am I telling you this? Well, I need you to understand that back in those days, and not long ago, Yamaha started from, oh gee, what's that word? It starts with an N. Nothing. And they were competing against the super established Italian, British, and German brands. In 1968, Yamaha was only a spotty 13-year-old, but was smart enough to play its part in creating the right conditions for the normalization and acceptance of Japanese bikes. Not only that, but they managed to start a craze of their own that will pay dividends for decades to come. The late 60s was a time when a growing number of riders were discovering the fun and excitement of off-road riding in the West Coast hills and mountains. Places like Saddleback in the Santa Ana Mountains or the foothills of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado were full of riders who had rode motorcycles and modified them for off-road use, typically by raising the muffler, adding braced handlebars, fitting bash plate under the engine, that sort of thing. Yamaha US took notice of that and after doing its homework realized there was a hugely untapped market for a on and off-the-road motorcycle, a slightly wonky, weird idea. At the time, to have one motorcycle do both things, much like New Zealand, was just a fantasy. It doesn't really exist. What, it's real? So Yamaha US in spring of '66 put on their best suits and went to present the idea to the Japanese headquarters and told them, guys, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, we need to make this, okay? The problem was that back then the Japanese didn't even fully grasp what a dual sport was or entailed. So they sent their best engineers to the US to observe the actual state of the off-road riding scene and listen to the riders themselves. Now for such a dual purpose bike, I'm gonna let you imagine all the back and forth between the American importers and the Japanese over the final specs such as engine, size, suspension, wheelbase, ground clearance, and so on. But in 1968 AD, the vision is unified and the light, slim, dual sport capable Yamaha DT1 is born. It's a 250cc single-cylinder two-stroke and it's an immediate success. For a young Yamaha, the DT1 is Apple's Apple II. It's Kim Kardashian's sex tape. It's the bike that put it
on the freaking map, son.
It pioneered a niche and then dominated it as the niche grew. Was it the absolute first dual-purpose bike? No. Was it the most important mass-produced one? Absolutely. Stepping into the 70s now, the DT1 pioneered this era's dirt bike boom, and it was a time where it seemed that everyone owned a DT1. When you have celebrities the likes of Brigitte Bardot, which was the French Marilyn Monroe, personally asked to buy a DT1, you know you're reaching new heights. Yamaha had finally cracked the US and French markets, among many others. Now the Fringe company is part of the cool kids, and the ex-cool kids, and now the has-beens. By the mid-70s, with the DT1 one of its cash cows dominating the trail bike segment, Yamaha began development on its successor. With the more emissions-conscious US, it was hard to justify making the Evolution bike a two-stroke, a technology Yamaha had mastered to perfection by then, and it had to be a four-stroke, which was still relatively new to Yamaha, but spoiler alert, they nail it, okay? In the 1975 Paris Motor Show, on the Yamaha stand is the brand new 500cc four-stroke XT500. Now pay attention to this one because this is where things start getting pretty crazy. Yamaha could do no wrong in this niche it made for itself, and the XT500, surprise surprise, became an instant bestseller. Remember, there's no Africa Twin at this stage, not even the first BMW GS. The XT500 was king. This durable, torquey four-stroke thumper with a robust yet lightweight chassis became synonymous with freedom and exploration. In the 70s, a decade synonymous with hanging out down the street with your friends on bicycles. Freedom and exploration, a match made in heaven. It satisfied the American off-road enthusiasts looking for a recreational bike, as well as satisfying the European who found the XT500 to be an excellent all-rounder to run errands on, but also to tour on. Now, as usual, people push concepts a bit too far. There was this group of crazy Frenchmen who started racing all sorts of vehicles and XT500s from France to the deepest parts of Africa. These ragtag rallies tested the riders and the bikes to the extreme, so quickly a following gathered for these nutters. So for 1979, a properly organized rally was created. Yes guys, I'm talking about the very first Dakar. Does it ring a bell? Sounds familiar? I cannot talk about the Tenere without talking about the Paris-Dakar, okay? They're as inseparable as mac and cheese, or medieval times and diseases, or Germans and socks and sandals. What's the Paris-Dakar, you say? Oh, it's nothing. It's just the most badass grueling cross-country rally where you go from France to Senegal, going through interminable deserts where vegetation, animals, locals and sandstorms, or the slightest mistake can claim your victory or your life. No big deal. Now remember, this isn't today's watered-down Dakar. In the first years, there was no helis, no GPS, no communication, no assistance vehicles. Just mostly privateers battling a route they get at the last minute. People legit got lost in deserts, all alone. My life flashes before my eyes if my Google Maps momentarily loses signal. Imagine being lost in a desert in Africa. The 80s and 90s were the Dakar's golden era. If you were winning Dakar, you were dominating the other brands in the eyes of the public, and especially the French, since the race departed from the French capital and was widely covered by the medias. And Yamaha's French distributor, Yamaha Sonotto, understood that very early on and decided to take part in these rallies. So they rally modify a few XT500s, and at the hand of Cyril Neveu, they win both in the inaugural 1979 and 1980 race, battling it out with the freshly released BMW R80 GS, which was a twin-cylinder behemoth much bigger and faster than the Yamis. The battle was on in the deserts and in the showrooms. For its third year, the Paris-Dakar became officially sanctioned by the FIA and FIM as an international race. What does that mean? Well, it means now it had the attention of every freaking manufacturer on the planet, that's all. And factory teams with full manufacturer support spread like wildfire. Among the most deadly rivals were the BMW teams, and the XT500 riders found themselves eating BMW dust. Yamaha thought it would be enough in 1982 to release the XT550, which had an extra 50cc. Woof. But it was obviously too little too late. It was a struggle to keep an aging bike competitive. They lost in 81 to a BMW GS, in 82 to Honda, who now wanted a piece of the action, and in 83 to a GS bored to 980cc. They lost again and again and again and again and again. The XT550 made one particular Frenchman irritated. And he was the wrong Frenchman to irritate. His name is Jean-Claude Olivier. Yes, this badass. He was the charismatic face of Yamaha in France. He started importing Yamahas when the name meant nothing in the 60s. So his position of president of French Yamaha, Yamaha Sonotto, was widely deserved. But on top of running the company, this crazy bugger was also on the rally races, who participated in the African and Dakar rallies as early as the late 70s into the 80s and 90s. That's crazy. That's like if Claudio Domenicali, CEO of Ducati, was a MotoGP racer as well. He was the one who entered XT500s in any rally he could find as early as the 70s because he saw competition as a very strong marketing tool, and the fact the president was a racer himself made everyone go nuts. Not only that, but he brought a unique boots on the ground perspective when he was talking to Yamaha HQ about what people wanted. So why was he irritated? Well, he and his team were pulling every trick in the book to win against the big 800cc and then later almost 1000cc twin-cylinder Beamers, and the only support Yamaha HQ gave them was an extra 50cc in a single. So he picked up the phone to Yamaha HQ and basically told them, Yamaha, wake the f up, huh? We need the big guns, we need a new bike. I'm paraphrasing, but you're getting the gist, right? That sent the development team at HQ to work, and the result of their efforts was, in 1983, the XT600
Wait for it.
Tenere. Yes, the first one with that name, a name chosen by Jean-Claude himself. It's the name of a desert in Niger. Now what's interesting is all the Dakars prior to that year did not go through the Tenere desert. It was only after 1983, the introduction year of the Tenere, that Dakar started going through the Tenere desert, which was a fantastic marketing masterstroke for the model. Coincidence? I think Jean-Claude had a word with the organizer. This year and every year forward, you make the Dakar go through the Tenere or you never find work again.
And the Oscar goes to...
The 83 XT600 Tenere became once again a natural choice of numerous racers and even enthusiasts who appreciated what it stood for. This Mama Jamma could reach speeds of up to 160 kilometers an hour. Okay, fine, what it lacked in outright CCs, it made up for with equipment specifically designed for fully fledged competition. It boasted the big 30-litre fuel tank, a front disc brake, 83, okay? What are you expecting? Corner and ABS. A bell crank monocross suspension, an aluminium swing arm, a very clever Yamaha dual intake system, and so on. Long story short, it was a sales phenomenon. 61,000 Mark I Teneres were sold, which, if you know simple math, is more than 10. The highest number, according to my niece. While the XT600 was making a killing in the showrooms, in the Dakars, the win was still always out of reach. Did I mention the Dakar was dangerous as hell? 40 races were lost in the desert, some for over 4 days that year. 75% of entries don't even finish. As the average speeds of the Paris-Dakar grew dangerously faster, big displacement bikes like the Beamers were given the upper hand. Jean-Claude Olivier pulled all the strings he could to make HQ bring out a bigger displacement bike, to no avail. The Japanese were simply too stubborn to budge for whatever reason. Naturally, in 84, the win went to another GS980R. Same story for 85, where Jean-Claude came second to the winning bike, despite a big displacement gap. He was not a slow boy. At that point, Jean-Claude had had enough of asking and started making. He gave Yamaha HQ the middle finger, and like the mad lad he is, he looked at the FZ750, which had just come out and was basically the R6 of its time. 4-cylinder, peaky, race replica sports bike, completely unsuitable for sand, and he thought, F it, let's put that engine in the Tenere chassis. The result was this heavy to pick up, something you do often in Dakar, completely undrivable monster, and as you'd imagine, it came 12th in the 1986 Dakar. But winning was not the point here. The point was Jean-Claude sending Yamaha HQ a message. You either work with us and give us a competitive twin like all the others, or I'll bastardize your bikes. You got to pimp my bike. The next year, in 1987, Jean-Claude finally realized that a big engine creates hurdles the like of traction, weight, and tire durability. No, not really. Jean-Claude snaps even harder than Michael Douglas in Falling Down and enters an even more undrivable 911cc 4-cylinder into the next Dakar. At this point, worried Jean-Claude might kill himself, and seeing Honda snatch wins left and right with their own 750cc twin, Yamaha HQ finally caves in and starts work on a state-of-the-art 750cc parallel twin called the XTZ 750 Super Tenere. It comes out in 89 and it was a breath of fresh air. After the minor refreshes to the XT600 that came out in 86 and 88, this was cutting edge tech time again. 5 valves per cylinder off-road twin, liquid cooling, discs all around with twin disc setup at the front, 26-litre tank, the lot. In 91, even the XT600 gets some love and becomes the XTZ 660 Tenere. It remains a single to differentiate it from the Super Tenere, but gets the same 5-valve and liquid cooling treatment in a bored-out 660cc engine. But it becomes more road-biased with a smaller 20-litre tank and shorter stroke suspension. And wouldn't you know it, using the new Super Tenere as their new base, Jean-Claude's Yamaha team starts winning again. After over a decade since their last win in 1980, in 1991, in the hands of Stefan Peter Hansel, Yamaha wins the Dakar in a modified Super Tenere. The next year, using the engine from the TDM 850, which had just come out, dry sump 270 crank off-road weapon of an engine, that with the Super Tenere superb chassis, the Yamaha Sonoto team in the hands of Stefan Peter Hansel was unstoppable. They kick ass in 1991, 92, 93, 95, 96, 97, 98. The 1998 win marked the 9th win for Yamaha out of 19 Dakar rallies, the most of any motorcycle manufacturer. And that was, in their eyes, a good moment as any to end its factory participation in the rally after more than 2 decades of fighting it out. Like a good movie, it had to end at one point. The world was changing, Yamaha's priorities were changing with the arrival of the R1. And just like that, the Tenere name was put to rest. It was just too good for this world. Fast forward to 2008, 12 years post-death of the Tenere name, Yamaha brings out the XT660Z Tenere. And just like a deadbeat dad coming to see his son again, the reception is lukewarm. That's not to say it was a bad bike or that it flopped. The modern era Tenere single had an all-new frame, fuel injection, a 4-valve head, new styling, but it just failed to capture the public's imagination like the first one did. A more radical change came with the Super Tenere, which returned in 2010 and had as much in common with the previous Super Tenere as I do with Brad Pitt, with a 1200cc Dock 270 twin pumping out 110 horsepower, the 260 keg is wet. Dry sump, shaft drive, ABS ride-by-wire, engine maps, cruise control, traction control. The bike could be described as sophisticated. Did you see me try really hard not to say bloated and fat? Next to Super Tenere, this thing was as if it fell out of a spaceship. But then it made sense. It was not trying to win desert races anymore. It was trying to take a bite out of the maxi trail segment of the BMW GS. Emphasis on the word trying, because really how many of these do you see on the roads these days? So at this point, Yamaha was understandably disheartened. Not trying very hard didn't work, and trying too hard didn't work either.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
So it stopped trying altogether. But fast forward to 2015 and the MT range is selling like hotcakes, which enabled Yamaha to take on extra projects. Enter this handsome man, Eric de Seine, president of Yamaha Europe. Eric was the understudy and right-hand man and successor to Jean-Claude Olivier. He knew the guy before even working for him, so they had a very special relationship. After the tragic passing away of Jean-Claude Olivier in 2013, Eric felt the best way to tribute his friend and the man who made Yamaha into what it is was to build another Tenere, the name that made Jean-Claude into the legend that he is. And this, guys, this is why it took so long from concept to production. With such a history behind the name, with it being a tribute to a legend, it had to be perfect. Japan was quick to send Eric back some edited prototypes, which were simply too compromised and not good enough for him. When HQ was watering down the T7 concept and fighting for essentially a Tracer 700 with fancy headlights, Eric and his team were fighting for a worthy XT600 Tenere successor with fancy headlights. Anything else with no real off-road capabilities was not good enough for them. Everyone from the get-go agreed it had to have the Dakar look and CP2 engine, the development of which I talked about in my MT-07 episode, but everything else was a lengthy negotiation. Production was delayed multiple times because of important things like a new frame, increase in ground clearance, increase in fork travel and diameter, changing to an aluminium swing arm, but also sometimes on the silliest of things Eric didn't budge on, such as the foot pegs. They alone were 2 months of back and forth. Eric did not want any generic foot pegs on the Tenere 700. He fought for the proper off-road foot pegs for excellent stability standing up. The T7 concept, for example, has a single disc, while the 700 Tenere has a twin disc. All these improvements made the Tenere massively overshoot its target initial price of 7,900 euros to now 9,700 euros. But Eric did not care because now the bike told a story just looking at it. It gave off a feeling of lightness, of freedom and exploration. Sounds familiar? And when it finally came out in 2019,
Oh my God!
The reaction was finally the one Yamaha was hoping for. It might cost almost as much as an XSI 900, the best bike on the planet as we all know, but it justifies it. The price is still further justified by it being one of the very few bikes still assembled in Europe. A badge of honor these days, the very comparable yet 21% more expensive KTM 790 Adventure is made in China. Need I say more? If you're still watching by now, then you probably care about what I think of it. And really, even for a massive nitpicker like me, I think it's a success. A true throwback to the no electronics, no nonsense dual sport you can repair by the side of the road or trail. There's not much wrong with it and owners seem very satisfied. Because it does not suffer from low ground clearance, I'm not terribly bothered it's not dry sumped. That would have required a lot of surgery on the CP2, which would have made the price skyrocket. I do wish, however, they put a bigger fuel tank in the thing. I know the CP2 is a fuel sipper, but just for the bulgy look of a Dakar fuel tank, oh, I'd be willing to pay extra for that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. And judging by some prototypes seen roaming about these days, maybe even that wish might come true. Last time I wrote something this long, I got a degree for it, so thank you for sticking around till the end, and I hope you enjoyed your PhD in Tenere studies. If you did, I have nothing to sell you or promote. Just like and subscribe. Maybe drop the link to a friend. Do it! That hugely motivates me to make these videos, which take an ungodly amount of hours. I'm already hard at work at making the next one, so stay tuned. And until then, watch another one.